Happy holidays, friends, and welcome to Truth or Lore. I'm Mr. Mythos, and today we'll be examining a particularly questionable age-old biblical myth that many still believe to be true-to-life history. As an integral part of the biblical Nativity Christmas story, the Gospel of Matthew tells a dark and brutal tale of mass infanticide at the hands of a mad king. This event is known as the Massacre of the Innocents, the systematic killing of all newborn boys within the city of Bethlehem. Even today, Roman Catholic, Eastern Rite, and Orthodox churches still commemorate the children who died in the Massacre of the Innocents as the first martyrs of Christianity. The Feast of the Innocents, as it's known, is typically observed in late December, just a few days past Christmas. This event, though gruesome and cruel, is an integral part of the historical nativity of Christ. At least that's what the churches have been saying for nearly 1,000 years. But historical researchers have begun to theorize that it may have possibly been an invention of Matthew, one of the four authors of the Gospels of the New Testament. To this day, though, it's still up for debate. I'll leave it up to you to decide, and I'll give my own opinion at the end. Without further ado, this video aims to answer this question. Was the Massacre of the Innocents an event that actually occurred? And if it was, why are there no other historical records, neither secular nor religious, that make reference to this systematic slaughter? Before we dive in, please subscribe to my channel if you're interested in ancient myth, religious folklore, and the most puzzling mysteries of history. I promise to bring you only the most fascinating content, here on Truth or Lore. We'll begin by exploring the events that led up to the massacre, as told by the Gospel of Matthew. The story begins with the wise men, better known today as the three kings, though Matthew never stated how many of them there were, nor ever once referred to them as actual kings. Instead, it's likely that they were distinguished astrologist magi from Persia who read a sign in the stars above, foreseeing the birth of the new king of the Jews. They found the sign so remarkable, so infallible, that they set out on a treacherous 1,000-mile trek from Persia to the land of Judea in order to pay deference to the baby king and deliver their famous gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Because these magi were so set on locating the newborn king in Judea, they likely traveled to the capital city of Jerusalem first to inquire and learn what they could as to his location. Unknowingly, this act was the catalyst for the terrible sequence of events to follow. Herod the Great, king of Judea for nearly 30 years, was at his tipping point of power and subsequently his paranoia as well. Growing old at the age of 70, it is thought that he was anxious about losing the supremacy and reverence he had forced upon his kingly position for so long with an iron fist. Though he was king of Judea, he served as a vassal for the Roman Empire. The local Jewish population despised him for this, and his usefulness to Rome had long been dwindling. In fear of being removed from his position by Caesar Augustus, the political pressure transformed Herod into an increasingly paranoid and ruthless ruler. So, a troop of royal Persian magi arriving with the news of a new king of the Jews, the legitimate successor to the long-dead royal lineage of David. This announcement disturbed Herod to the core. These magi were distinguished royalty, so this birth proclamation was not taken lightly. To secure his throne, King Herod proceeded to commit one of the most heinous crimes in biblical scripture. In cold blood, he sent his death squads to the village of Bethlehem with orders to slaughter every male infant under the age of 2. What's strange is that, for such a horrific event, Matthew's account of the Massacre of the Innocents is found in no other gospel or biblical canon. Perhaps more importantly, there is not a single mention from secular sources, not even 1st century AD historian Flavius Josephus, who was well known for supplying immense detail and 2 volumes worth of focus to King Herod's tyrannical and murderous rule. So there is quite literally only one source from the time period to back the existence of this event. But before we jump the gun, we should take a closer look at Herod the Great and examine his character to see whether he was even capable of committing such an atrocity. After all, Herod is more than just a central character in the biblical Christmas story. In fact, he's one of the most well-documented figures from the ancient world. more so than Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. And this is only because Flavius Josephus dedicated 2 entire books to the life and rule of King Herod. Known to his people as Herod the Great, we have to ask, how did he earn this title of reverence? Most of his career as king was marked with accomplishment and progressiveness. He's known for building the deep-sea harbor and port city of Caesarea in just 12 years, as well as a number of other cities like it. He was responsible for rebuilding the Second Temple of Jerusalem, making it a truly grand destination. He rebuilt, restructured, and beautified the entire city of Jerusalem, topping it off with his own magnificent palace, theater, and hippodrome stadium. And thus, Herod was known as the Great Builder, or Herod the Great for short. But behind the silver veil of Herodian architecture, a storm was brewing behind closed doors. The historian Josephus recounts Herod's distinct change in personality as he grew older. Today, psychiatrists theorize that Herod suffered from paranoid personality disorder, but perhaps he has some genuine reasons to feel so wary. Herod married 10 wives, each of whom birthed a male prince who schemed to be the next in line for the throne. Josephus recounts conspiracies, assaults, and attempted poisonings between the brothers. When they weren't at each other's throats, Herod became paranoid that they might be coming for him. He put 3 of his own sons to death on suspicion of treason. He killed one of his own wives and his mother-in-law with her. Several uncles and cousins were executed in succession. This familicide proceeded to fester and spread outside of the family. Political advisors, local leaders, religious teachers and their students, anyone who he suspected of treason or doubt in his rule. He invited the high priest over for a game of water polo and sunk him to the bottom of the ocean. Caesar Augustus once said, "I would rather be Herod's pig than his son." As Jews did not eat pork, he would have a better chance at a long life. In 4 BC, Herod was knocking on the gates of hell. He had tried everything possible to fend off the relentless diseases that had infiltrated his body. Hot springs and tonics, nothing could cure his grave illness. Accepting his fate, Herod began to worry that his people would surely celebrate his passing and dance on his grave. He wanted to give them something to mourn on the day of his death. So he hatched a super villainous plot. He commanded his sister Salome to arrest the people's favorite Jewish leaders and imprison them in the hippodrome. Once they had been brought there, he commanded his soldiers to execute them upon his death, so that thousands of families would mourn the moment Herod the Great dies. The moment he died, his sister countermanded his order and freed the Jewish leaders. All of Judea rejoiced the death of Herod the Wicked. The historical plausibility of the Massacre of the Innocents undoubtedly falls in line with the personality traits and character of Herod. He never once hesitated to kill enemies and family alike. He never discriminated between the young and the elderly. It's entirely believable that Herod ordered the killing of newborn boys in Bethlehem in order to protect his throne. So why didn't Josephus mention it? Well, there are actually a few reasons, and I'll elaborate in a second. First, he may have never heard of it. Second, he may have deemed it insignificant. And third, he may have deliberately left it out in order to appease his audience. Now, for those first 2 assumptions, how could Josephus have never heard of such a horrific slaughter? And if he did, why would he ever deem it as insignificant? As important as it is to the Nativity story of Christ, this event is often overemphasized in Christian tradition. Byzantine liturgy estimated that there were 14,000 newborns slaughtered. An early Syrian list of holy innocents increased that to 64,000, and Coptic sources more than doubled that number to 144,000. In 1907, the Catholic Encyclopedia attempted to calculate an accurate number based on the population of Bethlehem, a small village of approximately 1,500 residents, as well as the average birth rate and high infant mortality at the time. They concluded that the actual number was likely between 6 and 20 male newborns. Though we see such an act as so evil and unspeakable today, the mortality rate of infants in the ancient world was so high that this event might have not left much of an impression on anyone other than the grieving parents, particularly as the massacre could have easily been overshadowed by more high-profile executions and events going on at that time, or simply lost in the crowd of Herod's long record of ruthless atrocities. Either way, this stands as a possible reason why Josephus may have never heard about the event, as he documented Herod's rule 100 years after his death, or why he may have found the event comparatively insignificant. The third reason is that Josephus may have intentionally and strategically left it out of his writings. As historian Paul L. Meyer stated, Josephus wrote for a Greco-Roman audience, which would have had little concern for infant deaths. Greeks regularly practiced infanticide as a kind of birth control, particularly in Sparta, where the Roman father had the right not to lift his baby off of the floor after birth, letting it die. So it's possible that including the massacre of the innocents would have been seen as strange or irrelevant to his readers and audience, thus Josephus may have left it out intentionally. All this being said, the next point I'm going to bring up is a theory killer for me. I don't think the massacre ever happened. Why? Because the only source that describes this event, the Gospel of Matthew, seems to be strategically crafted to parallel Jesus Christ with the Abrahamic story of the prophet Moses. Let's return to where we left off in the story, when Herod sent out his death squads to Bethlehem to carry out his massacre of the innocents. It turns out that his plan to rid the world of the new king of the Jews was thwarted by the hand of God. When the Magi left Bethlehem to return to Persia, Joseph was visited by an angel in his dream. The angel instructed him to wake up and flee to Egypt with the child and his mother and stay there until it is safe to return, as Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. That night, they fled to Egypt and stayed there until Herod's death. Now compare this to the story in the Old Testament's book of Exodus. The Egyptian pharaoh's sacred scribes foretell the imminent birth of a child that would threaten his rule. The pharaoh orders all Hebrew newborn boys to be thrown into the Nile River and drowned. Moses' parents receive a message in their dreams that the pharaoh is looking for Moses in order to kill him, and they must act immediately to save his life. Sounds familiar, right? It's because these two stories are direct parallels to each other. In fact, the massacre of the innocents is only one part of this parallel within Matthew's larger nativity narrative. There are countless other direct references beyond the scope of this video, such as how both wandered into the wilderness and were tested, how both preached atop a mountain. The list goes on. But wait, there's a small detail that's often overlooked, but solidifies this whole theory. The story of Moses in the book of Exodus was experiencing a reprisal in popularity in the 1st century, so much of that original story had been elaborated and expanded upon in various offshoots and alternative versions. And one of the most popular alternative scenarios from the period happened to be the one paralleled in Matthew's story, specifically the pharaoh being warned of a newborn boy who would threaten his throne. The original story in Exodus told that the pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys to be killed in order to reduce the population of the enslaved Israelite minority in Egypt, as he was afraid of an uprising if he allowed the Israelite population to grow. This is also the version most known today. But Matthew's story alluded to the different and, at that time, popular offshoot of the original story. So I think we caught Matthew in the act of deliberately constructing Jesus as the new Moses. But what was his motivation? Moses was undoubtedly the most important prophet of the Hebrew Bible, as well as in other Abrahamic religions such as Islam, where he is the most widely mentioned figure in the Quran. So, if the Jews believe Moses to be the greatest religious leader in all of history, then Jesus must arise from his shadow in order to be comparable, compete, and take root. As you read more and more into both stories, it becomes obvious that Matthew purposefully shaped his story of the nativity and life of Christ in order to appeal to popular Jewish scriptures and legends. It was marketing. So was the Massacre of the Innocents a historical happening or simply an invented myth? It is certainly possible that the massacre occurred, but we are considering an event with only one single source from the time period and not even mentioned by Luke, who wrote his own version of the Christ Nativity story shortly after Matthew wrote his, though their stories wildly differ in many more ways than just this. There's zero archaeological evidence either. We know King Herod existed, his infamous Hippodrome Stadium, and the small village of Bethlehem, but nothing suggests that this event ever happened. No buried archives, no mass grave of baby skeletons. This doesn't disprove the story, but it definitely doesn't lead it any credence. My personal opinion is that the entire story was fabricated as a parallel to the Moses story, and Herod was used as a plot device because he was recognized and truly despised. More than that, he fit the right time, location, and role to make the story perfectly believable. Ancient Christian marketing. And since so many people know the story so well today, I guess Matthew did a good job. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this investigation into the Massacre of the Innocents interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And subscribe if you'd like to explore more mysteries of history here on Truth or Lore. Happy holidays and Lo Saturnalia. I'm Mr. Mythos, and I'll see you in the next video.